What up, family? This is your boy, Adam of Nola. And today we are diving into the responses that I got to my Charlie Kirk video from a week ago. Before I get into this, I want to put out a quick disclaimer. This is going to be the last piece of Charlie Kirk comment that I do for a while. This may, in fact, be the last piece of Charlie Kirk content that I do ever. I don't want this channel to become all Charlie Kirk all the time. But given the nature of what happened last week and the response that I got to my video on the matter, I felt like it was pertinent to kind of synopsize and summarize the comments that I've gotten on that video. So for some quick context, I have a tiny little channel here on YouTube. It's been growing, and thank you for that. But as YouTube channels go, it's just a spot on the ass of YouTube right now. So when I put out a video, normally if I get a few thousand hits on it, that's great. If I get 10,000, that's a viral hit by my standards. But the Charlie Kirk video did well over 10 times that amount. And I'm not saying that as some kind of brag. It's more just a symbol of the times, I guess. It's me happening to do something that hit the right note for what people wanted to watch at the time. But with well over 100,000 views, you get thousands and thousands of comments. And inevitably, those comments in aggregate sometimes say more than the subject of the content itself. So that's why I wanted to go through some of these. I'm not going to be pulling these up one by one. There's far too many for that. I'm just going to be putting these into buckets and talking about the kind of replies that I got from my Charlie Kirk video. The first category that I have to discuss, because honestly, it surprised me in a good way, was the sheer number of people who put comments to the effect of saying, hey, I'm a Christian and I agree with all of this. Or, hey, I'm a Christian, but thank you for putting up this video. Obviously, I am not a Christian, and this channel does not tailor in general to Christian interest. But I'd like to believe that you don't have to be atheist or agnostic in order to appreciate some of the content that I put up, especially with regard to this Charlie Kirk video. And to be fair, the largest category, the most comments that I got back were those from people who were self-professed Christians saying, hey, a good job on this video. Obviously, that's not all that I got, but the sheer number that I got from people who profess to be Christian and appear to totally agree or mostly agree with the sentiments that I put in my original Charlie Kirk video was eye-opening. And I mean eye-opening in a good way. I spend more than my fair share of time on this channel beating up Christians, and they can take it. At least most of them can. But I think it's just fair to point out when I do a video like the Charlie Kirk video, and I get the sheer volume of responses that I got from people who are self-professed Christians who were not feeling defensive. They were not feeling like they had to embrace hatred and embrace Christian nationalism. And they did not feel like they had to paint me as part of the demon left or some kind of enemy of the state, merely because I had the gall to call out some Christians for their responses to Charlie Kirk. So for all of you self-professed Christians who appreciated that video and let me know in the comments, thank you. Your comments are appreciated and welcome. I also got not a huge number, but a strange number of people refuting the idea that Charlie Kirk has been or will be canonized. To be fair, I guess this is my fault because not in the title, but in the thumbnail for my video, it said Charlie Kirk canonizing a demon. And I thought it would be pretty clear. I think it was pretty clear to most people that this was a little tongue-in-cheek, but I had some people correcting me saying that he hasn't been canonized. But I also had a number of people responding in a way that made me think that they actually thought that he's been canonized. So, to be clear, Charlie Kirk has not been canonized, and I'm pretty certain he never will be, officially speaking. First of all, to be canonized, that is a function of essentially the Catholic and or Orthodox Church, of which Charlie was not a member. Now, I'm not certain on this, but I don't know if you can even be canonized if you're not a member of the church at the time that you die. Maybe you can, and some of you Catholics or people with Catholic experience can correct me in the comments. But even if you could be, I do know enough about the process of canonization to know that it's long and it's political. Nobody, no matter how beloved by any group of people, gets killed one day and is canonized a few days later. First of all, you have to be beatified, and then you have to be canonized, and in between they have to confirm all these miracles that supposedly happened both while you were alive and then after you died. It's an incredible mess. And even if they were trying to fast track him to saintliness, they would never have even been able to do it in that amount of time. And again, I don't think they ever would try because he wasn't a Catholic. So just in case I have to make that clear, that thumbnail was a little tongue-in-cheek. The idea being that the alt-right, especially the American alt-right, is essentially canonizing him immediately. But no, he's not officially canonized, nor will he ever be. So in case anyone wasn't completely clear on that, please let me state that for the record. I also had a strange number of people commenting and correcting me on the idea that he wasn't actually assassinated. He was murdered. Now, I didn't put this in the thumbnail, but I opened the commentary of the video by saying that Charlie Kirk had been assassinated. And I think I used that term several more times during the course of the video. So people were correcting me, saying he wasn't a political figure, he wasn't in office, so he wasn't assassinated. He was murdered. This happened so many times that I put out this little interim response video a few days ago, essentially telling people, dude, you're all wrong, okay? I'm sorry to be so high and mighty, but the simple fact is that while I do understand that assassination is usually associated in theory with political figures, you don't have to be a formal head of state or a formal holder of public office in order to be assassinated. Whether or not someone is assassinated or murdered is to some extent a judgment call. Now, obviously, if someone just gets shot walking down the street who no one knew before, that's not an assassination. But in the case of Charlie Kirk, it's absolutely within bounds to call it an assassination. But so many of you felt the need to pop into the comments and correct me on this, even though I was perfectly within bounds to say that he was assassinated. I did get also a refreshing number of comments from people who said they'd never heard of Charlie Kirk. Either they'd never heard of him before they saw my video, or they never heard of him before the assassination, and they just started getting a few news bits trickling into their feed. So it was wonderful to see how many people had not been indoctrinated in his worldview already. To be fair, I don't have a way to quantify this, but I think that a lot of the comments that I got to this effect were from people outside of the United States. I'm not saying that everyone inside the United States knew who Charlie Kirk was, but I think that if you had no idea who Charlie Kirk was, you were much more likely to not be a citizen of the US because he had far more visibility and political clout with the alt-right with those here in the United States. Nevertheless, it is nice to see the degree of ignorance that was out there about this man, because he's certainly someone who you're probably better off never having known that well. So if you didn't know about him until you saw this little furor building up in your timeline, then Good on you. I'm glad that you are not getting soaked into all of these negative influences. I have to say that personally, I was pretty well aware of him because he was fond of debating people, either on campuses or in formal university type atmospheres, even though he never really went to college. And some of those debates got a lot of play on YouTube and other platforms. And my opinions about Charlie Kirk are largely driven by the fact that he just loved to browbeat people who didn't have the same command of scripture that he had. And now, when I say that, that doesn't mean that I think that he was right about what he was saying about scripture, but he's one of these kind of individuals who could just pull up verses at will. And if you weren't prepared for that type of conversation, he could essentially gish gallop you into shutting the hell up. So he'd throw these verses at you, often out of context, even though that's what they blame atheists for. And he always had some pithy verse that he thought backed up his point. But also his debating tactics, as I see so often from people on the alt-right, these tactics were swarthy and, quite frankly, underhanded. He had no problem cutting people off when it served his agenda, but he would get pissed off if you cut him off. He would happily just not answer any of the pertinent questions that you had asked, simply so that he could force the conversation back into one of his alt-right talking points. And he had this list of alt-right talking points that he was determined to get out, even if what you were trying to talk to him about had nothing to do with any of these talking points, because he knew that these are the points that would make his crowd happy. And this is how he won a debate, merely by forcing it back into the alleys in which he was comfortable. So from that perspective, he was incredibly dishonest and fairly underhanded in his rhetorical style. But if you were not one to have watched a bunch of those debates, then I applaud you. You have better things to do with your life, and I envy you. So let's talk about another big bucket of replies that I got that all said something along the lines of, these Christians that I am exasperated with because they're all beside themselves over the death of Charlie Kirk. I had a lot of comments from people saying, hey, those aren't real Christians. Or saying, hey, Charlie was not a real Christian. Or also, in a somewhat accusatory manner toward me, they would say that I can't discern between true and false Christians. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with any of these comments. Do I think that Charlie Kirk was the kind of man who embodied the Christianity that I followed for 40 years? Hell no. But I want to make a very important point on this. I've said this in other videos before, but I think it applies so much here. One of Christianity's greatest strengths when it comes to recruitment, but also one of its greatest weaknesses when it comes to being an ideological force, is that, generally speaking, it has no central body, no governing authority. Now, I realize that if you're a Catholic, for example, you could say we absolutely have a governing authority, but that is not all of Christianity. That is just one major sect of Christianity. But there is no one at all who has the authority to say that you or me or anyone else is or is not a Christian. Now, I know a lot of people will try to tell you that they do. They'll pull out the Nicene Creed and they'll say, if you don't follow the Nicene Creed, you're not a Christian. But the Nicene Creed is not the definition of what a Christian is. They'll pull out verses from the Bible and say, this is what you have to do to be a Christian, or that's what you have to do to be a Christian. But again, this is everyone bringing their own private interpretations to the text. There is no unified definition of what a Christian is. Now, you can paint this positive or negative. On the positive side, it means that it makes it easy to recruit damn near anyone into being a Christian. Because if they say or do one or two things that make you happy and get you to bring them alongside you, then It doesn't matter if they do 100 other things that seem to go against your idea of Christianity. You can still say, nominally speaking, hey, they're a Christian now. And while many people try to do this no true Scotsman or no true Christian crap, and they try to tell you who is or is not a Christian, the simple fact is that the world is full of people who have every right to call themselves Christians, and yet they do not agree on some of the central tenets of Christianity that you feel are absolutely necessary to be a Christian. I go through all of this to say that while I agree that Charlie Kirk was at best a crappy example of a Christian, and at worst was not a Christian at all, the simple fact is, I don't have the authority to actually tell you he's a real Christian or not, or tell you what is or is not true or false Christianity. And guess what? You don't either. I don't care what denomination you're part of. I don't care what tradition you were raised in. I don't care what creeds or traditions you think are vital to Christianity. The simple fact is that you can't, in full confidence, say to the world in general that Charlie Kirk was not a Christian. Now, you can say that within your church, Charlie Kirk was not a Christian. You can say that within your denomination, Charlie Kirk would not have been accepted, maybe. And within those groups, you might have authority to say, hey, he was not one of us. But guess what? You don't have the authority to say definitively that Charlie Kirk was not a Christian, even though I may agree with you, even though many other Christians may agree with you. The simple fact is that if enough other Christians agree that he's one of us, then guess what? He's one of you. Now, I'm going to do other full videos about this in the future, but let me explain it to you this way. In many respects, Christianity is like a country club or a big international network of country clubs. And there is not a single governing authority that says who can be part of any one of the country clubs in this network. So you can say all day that so-and-so is not a member of my club. But if I go to the club all the time and there are a bunch of other club members who look at me and say, hey, there's Adam, he's in the club, then guess what? I'm in the club. Conversely, you can say you're a Christian all day long, but if almost no one else in the club says you're a Christian, then you're probably not a Christian. Now, I know I just said that no one has the authority to deny someone the title of Christian. But I do think that there is a softer working version of this, which is just that from the perspective of this club, if a large enough number of people who are in the club recognize you as being part of the club, then guess what? You're in the club. And if no one in the club recognizes you as being part of the club, then guess what? You're probably not in the club. Even if you follow all the bylaws, even if you say all the words, but if no one else in the club will acknowledge you as a member of the club, then you're kind of not a member of the club. And Christianity is a lot like that. Now, like I said, it's like this international network of clubs that are all loosely joined together under this big umbrella. So you might say, well, he wouldn't be welcome at my club, and that's fine. But if there is a big enough group of other people in the club who say, oh yeah, Charlie Kirk was absolutely in our club, then, well, he's kind of in the club. I'll get into that more in future videos, but I think that too often Christians try to shunt away criticism because they'll see someone doing or saying crap that they think is antithetical to Christianity, and their way of handling it is to say, well, he's not a real Christian. He's not actually a Christian. You're lumping him in with the rest of us Christians, and you shouldn't because he's not a Christian. But the fact is, if there's a whole big group of Christians somewhere else who are embracing him, then guess what? He's in the club. How would you like to be one of my advisors? I'm using Skepticus's memberships as a way to allow you to have a voice in the content and the direction of this channel. I hope to see you in the membership pool, and I want to hear your voice in what Skepticus is doing going forward. On a similar note, I did have a lot of comments asking something to the effect of, why do you lump all Christians together? Or they'd say, don't I realize that American evangelicals do not represent all of Christianity? Now, one of the biggest areas where I get these types of replies from are from people who are not in the US, because outside of the US, evangelicism has a much smaller foothold, a much smaller power base, if you will, and they tend to look much more askance at American evangelicals as being ridiculous. So when I put up a video like my Charlie Kirk response and I say things about Christianity in general, of course, it rubs some people the wrong way. And I get that. I'm not going to excuse this, but I'm going to explain this. I've explained this in other videos before, but I'll say it again here, that yes, sometimes I do speak about theism or Christianity in general through the lens of a guy living in the American Deep South. And I know that evangelicals don't represent all of Christians. They don't represent all of American Christians. They certainly don't represent all of theists around the world. But that being said, if I have to couch every single reference I make to, well, this only, I think, applies to Christians of these denominations in these geographical areas during these time spans regarding these issues, then every conversation around this becomes tiresome, to say the least. So, while I do understand that maybe sometimes I speak in too broad of generalities, I think that there is some basis for what I'm saying, even if you don't fall in these groups, because here's the deal. In America, this evangelical crap has a huge force, a huge impact on all of American discourse and all of American politics, even amongst Christians who don't associate with evangelicals at all. They are still an outsized force. So if you're an American who's Christian, but you're not evangelical, and you're thinking, why am I lumping all of this together? It's because these people are doing crappy things in the name of your religion in our country. Outside of the US, I do understand that this evangelical force is not nearly as strong, but I would still argue that there is a thread of fundamentalism. For example, I've heard this coming from people in Australia, that tends to exert undue force. So if these things don't apply to you as a Christian, if I'm talking about things that really just apply to fundamentalists, evangelicals, literalists, etc., and you're thinking that doesn't apply to me, then fine, it doesn't apply to you. I get that. It's kind of like if I watch a video from someone who is dealing with a civil rights issue and they're talking about what white people are doing in this country and they're not happy about it, I could take that as a personal attack. I could say, hey, I'm not just like every other white guy. Why are you lumping all the white people together? Or I could just understand that they are voicing a generalized frustration that on its best day doesn't apply to me, but maybe on my worst day, it still applies to me a little bit. And even if it doesn't apply to me at all, it's still healthy sometimes to see the way that white people present themselves in racial situations. And on a similar note, even if these critiques don't apply to you at all as a Christian, I think it can still be healthy to see how some of these critiques are applied against Christians, even if you can say, hey, I don't do that crap. It doesn't apply to me. That's fine. Then it doesn't apply to you. Move on. But I can't sit here in every video, in every instance where I'm talking about Christianity and try to break it down by 12 different demographic slices in order to make sure that I never, ever lump someone in the wrong way with someone else. Ultimately, at the end of the day, as a viewer, you do at least have some responsibility to parse through this intelligently and know that if what I'm saying doesn't apply to you, then it doesn't apply to you. And that's okay. Now, here's one that I received a number of times from people who think that they're very clever. Something to the effect of, why didn't I provide references for any of the statements that I attributed to Charlie Kirk? This is a classic BS, racist, alt-right playbook right here. You can come up with someone like Charlie Kirk or Donald Trump or any of these other ass clowns, and you can talk about the things that they have clearly said in public, on camera, etc. But if you don't give all the clips in your video, or if you don't give all these references in the notes below, they're going to say, well, why don't you provide references for all these things? I am not making up weird conspiratorial stuff that Charlie Kirk supposedly said. I am talking about things that Charlie Kirk is known to have said. And if you don't believe me, you can Google it. You're a big boy or a big girl. I have faith in you. And if you can't find it, it's because you're really not looking for it. This is such a sad little dodge that is brought out from people who want to defend these assholes. The dodge is very simple. You can take a very public figure like Charlie Kirk, who is on record saying a whole bunch of nasty crap. But then if you reference it when you're talking about it, everyone will come up and say, well, where's your references? Where's your references? I need all this proof. I need evidence. He's a massively public figure. Go look it up. I am not your Google. I am not your AI. And I don't need to pull all these references. First of all, I'm not a news channel. Second of all, I'm not accusing him of something that everyone didn't already know him to have said. I'm not accusing him of anything that he didn't already embrace himself. It would be one thing if I wanted to create some video now that said, hey, did you all know that Charlie Kirk came out as gay? Well, not that there would be anything wrong with that, but that would be an incredible accusation for someone who doesn't seem to have gone along with that lifestyle at all. And if I wanted to get any credibility in telling you this on air, I would need, and by air, I mean YouTube video. You get what I'm saying. If I wanted to get credibility for this, I would need to provide you with some sort of reference other than me just saying it, because that would be out of character for Charlie Kirk. And this would be anathema to everything that he had said in his public statements. He was very anti-LGBTQ. But so the idea that he may have come out as gay would justifiably be discarded unless I could give some real references to back this up. But if I'm saying that Charlie Kirk was absolutely an anti-feminist, no, I'm not going to sit here and come up with 10 video clips to prove my point to you. If I'm saying that Charlie Kirk was a racist, no, I'm not going to come up with 10 references for you. You can Google it. And if you don't believe me, and if you think that that's so horrible for me to put in my video, then leave. I don't need you around. It's that simple. Along the same lines, I had several people that were so arrogant as to start putting definitions of the word racist in the comments. Yeah, I've never heard what the definition for a racist is. Thank you, assholes. This isn't specific just to the Charlie Kirk video, but I think it's hilarious. Whenever I get someone commenting who apparently thinks I'm just a complete jerk and they're all pissed off about what I've said or done, they want to start putting these comments down below. They think they're exposing me because they'll say something like, oh, this guy only likes liberal comments. In other words, I'll sit there and go through all the comments in my videos. Most comments, unless I'm against them, I will like them and put the little heart on them or whatever. It's my way of basically saying, hey, I've seen your comment. I mean, I can't sit there and reply to all of them. I can't even reply to most of them. But hey, I've seen your comment. It's cool. I like it. And then every once in a while on this video and others, I will have some butthurt alt-right cowboy saying, oh, this jerk only likes the liberal comments. Yeah, you're right. I guess I should go through and like all of your nasty, ridiculous comments as well. I guess I should go through my own comment section, find every comment that I hate, and put a like and a heart on it just to make your butthurt little self happy. Does that make sense? I mean, look through the rest of my channel. If you think that you're exposing me for having liberal ideas, wow, you really got me there. What a super sleuth you are. Now, I knew this would happen. It actually didn't happen as much as I thought it would. But of course, I had some people trying to imply that I was a coward for talking about someone after they're dead, as though Charlie Kirk has died and now we can't say anything else about him ever again. Now, keep in mind that when they're making these kind of stupid comments, they wouldn't have minded if I was saying good things about Charlie Kirk. They're just pissed off that I have the audacity to say something unflattering about Charlie Kirk after he's dead. As though once you die, it doesn't matter how big of an asshole you were, no one can say a bad thing about you again. So Hitler, Pol Pot, Stalin, it doesn't matter. You could have been the worst human on the face of the earth, but once you die, we can't possibly say a bad thing about you because, hey, you're dead. I had several people say like, well, you wouldn't say this to him when he was alive. Well, I mean, sure, I would have, but it's not like he and I had a rapport. But the idea that you could only say something to him in person, like I can only travel to one of his sites to debate him in person, otherwise it's invalid, is utterly ridiculous. Charlie Kirk was a public figure. He was a public figure because he made himself a public figure. He wanted public attention. And once you take that position, you are fair game for commentary, both during your life and afterwards. And if the other people aren't happy with that, grow the hell up. This is the way that public discourse works. You don't get to decide when someone does or doesn't say something about a person, even including after they're dead. And the idea that I can't say something about Charlie Kirk now because he's died is utterly ridiculous. And the idea that I wouldn't talk about someone that I don't personally know is also utterly ridiculous. Under this idea, this means that I guess none of us can ever talk about a public figure because you don't personally know him, because you haven't had him over for dinner. So we can't possibly put up any commentary discussing him at all. Grow the hell up. Come on, man. And finally, of course, I'll just mention the ad hominems. I'm not going to sit here and pull them up. But the number of people, first of all, insinuating that I'm gay, which I'm thinking, if you think that calling someone gay is some great gotcha dig, then you are a disgusting pile of shit. I'm not gay myself, but I'm very much, I guess, what you would call queer adjacent. I have many queer friends. My wife identifies as queer. And if you think that's an insult in any way, you are a disgusting pile of shit. But hey, call me gay. I don't care. You can call me whatever you want. You can call me trans if you want. I don't care. It doesn't matter to you if it's true anyway, does it? Because you're a lying piece of shit. So if you want to think I'm gay, if that makes you feel like you got a great dig in on me, that's great. Think I'm gay. I had, of course, I always get a couple people commenting on my hair. Some people like my hair, but also other people like, I can't believe you even go on a YouTube video with that haircut. I don't care. You don't have to like my hair. You don't cut my hair. You don't pay for my haircuts. You don't have anything to do with my hair. So I couldn't care less, but I'm sure that Jesus spoke softly to you and said, hey, make fun of this guy's hair. Yeah, I'm sure that makes you a really good Christian, doesn't it? I've also gotten these people who say, get a job, which is so silly because, first of all, I have a job. I have a regular 40-hour-a-week paying job. I do this on the side. Not that it's any of your damn business, but even if I didn't have a job, even if this is what I did for a living, guess what? That's a job. So either way, I have a job. Even if I don't have a regular job, even if this is my only income and I don't make any money at it, apparently I'm figuring out how to live, so none of the rest of it is your business anyway. But hey, that's fine. You think you have a great dig telling me to get a job. Whatever. The ad hominems, I mean, I understand it. Since I've started this channel several months ago, of course, I get lots of nasty people in the comments. That's just the nature of doing a channel like this. But when you're doing an atheist channel and you know that a lot of these nasty comments come from people who would profess to be Christians, it really puts a different light on things. Because you can't help but think like, oh, did the Lord want you to tell me that I'm an asshole? Did the Lord say, hey, insult this guy's sexual preferences or insult this guy's haircut or his choice of shirts or whatever? Like, is that what Jesus wanted you to do? I guess so. But this has just been the synopsis of all the comments that I got on the Charlie Kirk video. We're going to put this Charlie Kirk subject to bed for a while, pun intended. I hope I don't have to really talk about this much. I have another video coming out tomorrow morning on a topic that has nothing to do with Charlie Kirk. So we'll get past this subject. But thank you for tuning in. I'm glad that you're here with me. If I've said anything that has offended God or Jeebus or Charlie Kirk, they are welcome to jump in at any time and correct me. Yeah, I guess Charlie Kirk's gotten pretty quiet lately. Thank you for being here. I hope to see you on future videos. But until I do, lo, I say unto you, stay skeptical.